Hi students, and welcome to one of my very favorite units that we are going to do this year. It's called the Growth of Industry. We're going to look at the industrialization of the northeastern and midwestern United States. So if you remember, we looked at Reconstruction, that's what was happening in the South. We looked at westward expansion, that's what's happening in the Midwest and in the West. And now we're going to look at industrialization, which is what's happening in the Northeast. All three of our units are happening at the same time. We're just focusing on different regions of the country, one at a time. Okay, and this is one of my very favorite units because it focuses on one of my favorite cities, Pittsburgh. We are going to look at in this lesson the reasons that industry grew. Why did industry grow so rapidly after the Civil War? And what was available to industrialize after the Civil War that was different than before? These are the two questions you should be able to answer very clearly at the end of this presentation. The first two factors of industry are access to raw materials and energy and increased workforce due to immigration from other countries. A factor is something necessary to industrialize. So we're going to look at four things that changed after the Civil War that are now available for industrialization. One is access to raw materials and energy, especially things like copper and coal provide energy and new materials so that we can manufacture things in our factories. Number two is an increased workforce. Many people immigrate from Europe and Asia to the United States in the late 18 and early 1900s. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And these are people who need jobs to support their families and buy food to survive. And they are going to come work in the factories. So these are two of the four factors of industry. Before we continue, I just want to let you know that industrialization means to switch from an agrarian means farming, society to one based on industry, which would be manufacturing, producing things in factories, man-made objects, and things like that. So the northeastern United States is making this shift from farming to working in factories and producing man-made objects. Many of the raw materials and farm things they are getting from other places are coming from the Great Plains, that area we just looked at, because the people in the cities need food from farms to eat and survive, and they need those raw materials and energy from out west back east. And in turn, from the northeast, they're going to send a lot of the man-made products out west. The final two factors of industry are the increased availability of financial resources and capital. There's a lot of money available in the late early 1900s, and we're going to discuss some very rich men and what they did to increase business and industry in the U.S. And number four is new inventions. We're going to look at three of those inventions and inventors right now. The first inventor we're talking about is Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was a very important contributor to the United States. He developed the light bulb, which used electricity to power and turn on lights after dark. This completely changed the way of life in America. Before we had light bulbs, we only had candles to read and live by. You can't run a factory on candlelight, but you can run a factory at night on electricity. So now this new immigrant workforce can work longer hours and more days of the week because we have electric light installed in factories and homes. And Thomas Edison is the one who invented that. One of his other significant inventions is the phonograph. The phonograph is a music player. It might appear to you kind of like a record player, and the discs that you placed on it were larger than CDs. And just to show you, this is where the sound came out, and this is where you put the music disc on the phonograph, and you turned this handle for it to play music. And phono means sound if you're looking at your root words. Our second inventor we are going to look at is Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. His invention was an improvement on the telegraph, which was a previous invention. The telegraph tapped out messages by clicking on here and sending them in Morse code over wires to another machine that looked just like this, and that person would receive the message. That's the telegraph. The telephone transmits your voice over wire instead of text. So this telegraph is kind of like the very first text message, whereas the telephone is going to transmit your voice over the wires. And I have a little video to show you on what the first telephone looked like.
Coast to coast for as little as 70 cents. It all began in Boston, 1876, with Alexander Graham Bell. The first telephone, the first switchboard, the first apparatus. Soon telephone lines to New York, to Chicago, and westward. And from San Francisco east. Lines from east to west.
I want to call your attention to this picture. This is a picture of the very first telephone. It looks absolutely nothing like the cell phones you each have in your pocket today, but this is what the very first telephone, invented by Alexander Graham Bell, looked like. The final inventors we are going to look at are the Wright brothers, and they invented the airplane in 1903. I have some silent footage of some original airplanes for you to look at. They're kind of humorous, so feel free to laugh. This invention changed travel and communication forever. The Wright brothers owned a bicycle shop to start out with, and then they began experimenting with flight. So hopefully from the picture on this page, this is a picture of their airplane, as well as from a little bit of the video footage. You get an idea of what that very first airplane looked like. So from the slides that you just saw, you should understand why industry grew. There are 4 factors of industry: access to raw materials and energy, increased workforce due to immigration from other countries, availability of financial capital, which means money, and new inventions such as the light bulb, the telephone, and the airplane are going to help grow industry in the United States. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for our next lesson.